Hello everyone. Just continuing yesterday's video really here. So, I think we finished off with Tottenham. We didn't really go into too much depth, but I'll continue the rest as follows. So in the 6th and 7th position, I currently have Aston Villa and Newcastle. Now, Aston Villa is a strange one because I believe they're really hamstrung with wages and PSR. So I don't think they will be big spenders this summer. They might bring in a few extra heads for the Europa League games, but it's obviously not the same as the Champions League. On their day, Aston Villa, I believe, can beat any Premier League team. The problem is, I believe that every player in that team has a mistake in them, and that seems to be what drops some points. You know, there's a lot of praise out there for Martinez, and I think he's a decent keeper, but I think uh, he has the capabilities of being one of the best in the world, but he often makes silly mistakes, like the one against Man United at the end of last season, where he got himself sent off. I mean, he's an absolute buffoon at times, you know. Now we think about that, I think it's sort of similar with the fullbacks at Aston Villa, Matty Cash, and I believe Dinya's still there. If not, you could leave a comment and say I'm wrong. But I'm not a big fan of those fullbacks, to be perfectly honest. I think Matty Cash can be good going forward, but defensively he leaves a lot to be desired. Their midfield, however, their midfield's actually really good. Um, you know, Yuri Tillmans, John McGinn, and Morgan Rogers. Now that is a solid midfield that can do a lot of damage. But the interesting thing for me would be, what is their attack going to look like next season? You know, they they had Marcus Rashford on loan in the second half of the season, and they also had Asensio as well. And it would have been great for them, I think, to keep Asensio, because he actually done quite a good job for them. Now, I don't know who the rest of their starting lineup is. To be perfectly honest, they might have more like sort of bench players, young players. Jacob Ramsey, I believe. Um, People like that who are decent players can come on, do a job. But this is the problem with predicting it so early. Is I think they need to do a lot of business, and I have heard rumours that Manchester United are interested in one Ollie Watkins. Apparently Newcastle as well, and that might change things for them. Now, we'll move on to Newcastle. The biggest issue in Newcastle is they are pursuing Benjamin Sesko. Uh, Now, so are Man United. And according to rumours, now I can't verify, you know, don't believe everything you see on the internet. Apparently, he wants Man United more. The issue there is Man United cannot afford to spend that much money on a centre forward. Man United also want Ollie Watkins, but I've heard Newcastle are linked to the exact same two players. And I think that if Newcastle keep Alexander Isak, I believe they will be fighting with Spurs for that fifth spot rather than be here in seventh. However, if they lose Isak, I still think they have a really good starting 11, bar a striker. And I think if they were to get Sesko, I think that would be really good for them, and they could continue a decent run throughout the season. In terms of other players in their squad. Their midfield's absolutely fantastic. You know, when you have Bruno Guimaraes and Tonali there, along with Joelinton, you've got a really good, solid midfield, a bit of feistiness about them. They're all very aggressive players. And, you know, Bruno and Tonali are very technical players as well. And then you get the likes of Anthony Gordon, Harvey Barnes, Jacob Murphy. They do need. Oh, sorry. No, they don't need another right winger. They've got Alanga. What a player. I think that's actually a really good deal for them. Some people might think it was too much, but I think Anthony Alanga will do a good job at Newcastle. So really, we're thinking about strikers. Sven Botman, a good defender. You know, Dan Burn as well, very good. Fabian Schur, a good defender as well. Nick Pope, kind of like Martinez at Villa. He's a really good goalkeeper, but he does have a mistake in him. And sometimes these mistakes accumulate in a single game. Player's confidence is down, and then he has the fans on his back about it. So they likely need to start thinking about upgrading the goalkeeper position, but I think the priority is striker, especially, you know, Callum Wilson going on a free. I mean, if they knew Isak definitely wanted to leave, would they have offered Callum Wilson a contract? I think probably, because he is a really good backup centre forward, to be honest. Even though he is injury prone, he is out most of the time. But if he is fit and you need him for a game, he can do a really good job. But I just worry about Newcastle getting transfers over the line. Now, if they do sell Isak to Liverpool, say, for instance, and they do get 120, 130 million, they really can start increasing that overall squad depth. And I think Benjamin Sesko is good enough for Newcastle to move on, and then they can go and get someone like Dusan Vlahovic perhaps next season. You know, someone who's a little bit older, takes a bit of pressure off Sesko. Or maybe they can go for a Kolo Muani. It hasn't really worked out for the various teams he's been at. You know, if he's on the market for an affordable price, that is. Moving on further down this list here, I think we're going to go there. So, this is a hard part of the table because, first of all, you get clubs like Brighton who have. What I would say about Brighton is they don't have fantastic top of the line players, but what they do have is they have a full squad of 7 out of 10 players with a few 8s and a few 9s. You know, like not 10 out of 10 quality players. Like, I'm talking about Salah, Isak, Rodri. They have they have a few 7s mostly throughout the squad. You know, I was actually surprised they sold Adingra. I actually really like him as a player, very dynamic. Perhaps they can get more people in. But 8th place is what I think for Brighton. You know, second year of their new manager. He done a pretty good job last season, I'd say, overall. Some of the games, frustrating results. But aside from that, they've done pretty well. Now, Manchester United, now that's a big topic of discussion. You know what? They need a number 9, an out-and-out number 9. And if I'm being perfectly honest, people like to hate on Hoyland a little bit too much for my liking. I think the problem with their team is that they've got Bruno Fernandes, and then they have a bunch of young players sometimes on the wings. Now, I think Ahmad is absolutely fantastic. They had Rashford, Garnacho, Sancho, players like this that are all very selfish players overall that just want to get the goals themselves. And then you've got Hoyland in the middle who can't get service to save his life. His confidence is low because the few chances he gets, he does miss, but he needs that consistent opportunity to get these goals. And I think overall, if you get an older striker like this is maybe a bit too far, but Lewandowski, players like this, just put him in for a season, you'll get something out of him. Now I quickly finish these other three off. Forest, Bournemouth, Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace have a problem where Mark Gay might be leaving, Eze might be leaving, even Mateta might be leaving. They need to really focus on getting that over the line. Get the money quickly, get the money for these players, and buy smart. Their coach is great, Oliver Glasner. He's a great coach. With Bournemouth, they have lost too much to not go out and spend. I believe it's Zabarny is being linked away with PSG. Kirkes to Liverpool, Huijsen to Real Madrid, and I think they need to get that sorted. Otherwise, I think they're finishing 11th. Crystal Palace 12th. They're always 12th every season, so that's no surprise. Forest done really well for most of last season, and they fell apart towards the end. They've sold Alanga, and they have brought in Ndoye. Am I correct in that? Let me just check this. Fabrizio Romano. Let's go for... Yeah, Ndoye. He had a really good European season, and I think he's a fantastic player. Sold Alanga, and there's obviously the whole thing revolving around Morgan Gibbs White. The hostage video situation. Obviously, the player or the player's agent leaked the buyout clause. Tottenham paid that, thinking that the club had allowed that to be public. Tried to sue Tottenham and went crazy. I don't know. Madness. It's an absolute madness, that. Forest is a strange one to predict because they do have European football, and although I think the way they play suits the players that they've got, I don't think Ndoye's enough really to give them a squad for the Europa League. They might be in the Conference League if Crystal Palace can get their situation resolved, but I don't think they'll be back in the European places next season. And with that, I'll leave this video at that. Thanks for watching. If you could give me a like, a subscribe even, that'd be great. Thanks for watching.